I thought I would do a Friday Reads today. I had intended to take a slightly longer hiatus. It's been about a month since I last filmed. I thought I would wait until late April, but I felt like filming today, so I figured why not. There's nothing stopping me. I've got my taxes done. I've got my paperwork in to be extended at my job. I've enrolled in one of the 2 classes I'm going to be taking in the summer term. So I've got things pretty much under control. I just kind of gave the house a deep clean. Floors, pulled out the couch, vacuumed behind it, cleaned that windowsill that had dead flies on it from last summer. Got the vacuum up near the ceiling to get the cobwebs, that sort of thing. And it's like 6:30 and it's still light out, so I've got a bit of natural light here to film with. I've turned my lamp on anyway because I know it's going to get dark as I film and I don't want to fade out. But in terms of reading, this is more than I've done in the past week. I've got 1 or 2 from the week before here. It's not everything I've read since we last talked, because that would be insane. I just hit my 50th book for 2018, and I've read a number of literary journals in there as well that don't count as books on Goodreads, but I count them as books in my own personal journal or catalog of books. I'm going to start with the book that I read last night that I really hated. This is The Lost Girls of Camp Forevermore by Kim Fu, and it's a work of CanLit. It's been in massive displays at chapters. I see it everywhere I go, and because I kept seeing it, it piqued my interest. The back says it's about 4 women who get lost in kind of the Canadian wilderness as children while they're on a camping trip. Something happens to their adult chaperone and they're essentially stranded in the wilderness together with very little food, and no one is going to be looking for them in the place where they are. And the synopsis kind of sets it up as this kind of gritty novel, and you do get the sense that it's going to talk about their later life, but I expected it to be about them as children stuck out in this predicament and the effect that it had on them later in life. Instead, what I got was a highly fragmented piece of work. The author does begin with that initial camping trip, but then all of a sudden we're jumping off to one of the women, her life, and it's not kind of A plus B equals C. It's not logical like that. We get a snapshot of her as a teenager, a snapshot of her as an adult getting married, a snapshot of her having an accident that she believes affects her mind. And then the author skips to the next woman, and we don't see them interconnected later in life. We don't see exactly how this affects we don't see exactly how this earlier trauma affects them. It's not really. It's maybe 10% about that camping trip when they were between the ages of 9 and 11, and it's 90% just kind of random, fragmented snapshots of these women's lives, and the snapshots themselves weren't that engaging. It wasn't something that I wanted to keep reading. I nearly DNF'd it, but because it's so short, I wanted to finish it to see if perhaps it got better, if perhaps it wrapped up with something that would give me like an aha moment. I see what the author is doing, but it didn't. I think it was supposed to be partly a mystery because we don't know at first exactly what happened to that counselor, that adult chaperone. exactly how they got out of the wilderness, but it's not well executed. It just sort of ends and you're left saying, what the hell did I just read? I did look this up on Goodreads, and there's a lot of 2-star reviews, and I did give it a 2-star review on Goodreads. And then you have a couple of people who are giving it 4 or 5 stars, saying this is the best fucking thing I've ever read. But I think that the 2-star and the 3-star reviews greatly outweigh the people who really love the book. So not my cup of tea. This is my cup of tea. You can see I'm going to have to pause this because I don't have a lot of space on my camera right now. 2 weekends ago, two weekends ago, I sat down and I read Love Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda. The movie is Love Simon. The book is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. This is YA, and you're probably wondering why I'm reading YA. I picked it up because I'd seen the movie trailer many times, and it's something I really wanted to see. And I wanted to dive into the book first. And I love this. I read it in one sitting. Very emotional just reading through this. The first YA novel I can say that I've read since I was in about middle school or high school that I actually liked and I actually got, that I felt like I was engaged with. So I might actually try to check out some more by this author. I believe she's written a couple of other books. But yes, I read this in preparation for the movie, and I saw the movie, and well, I loved the movie. The book was actually better. Then I read a thrift store find. This is A Change of Pace by Bruce West, and this is a collection of essays. Bruce West, someone I'd never heard of, but a CanLit author. Published in 1956 by the University of Toronto Press, and they're just really kind of lighthearted, humorous essays. The first one is called Timber, about him trying to keep his Christmas tree from falling down. He says, well, I'd just like to say that my Christmas tree fell down again this year. In fact, it fell down promptly the morning after it had been decorated. It's a peculiar thing about my Christmas trees, that they never fall down before they are decorated. And he goes on to talk about the circumstances of that, and it's quite funny. I laughed. And all these essays are about 2 to 4 pages long, so they're not long things, but they have a quick punch, and I believe they're essays that were published in, they were published in the Globe and Mail originally. And so basically it's a collection of editorials or essays that would have been published in the Globe and Mail newspaper, which is out of Toronto. And they were compiled into a book, and I really enjoyed them. There's something that I think I will be returning to in the future. Now let's talk about one that really tugged on my heartstrings and really got me interested. Another one-sitting read, and it's also more CanLit. I've read a lot of CanLit lately. So this is Nina Burkhout's The Gallery of Lost Species. It is about the relationship between a young woman and her sister and her mother and also her father. It takes place in Ottawa, a very familiar setting for me. Her sister develops a drug addiction, leaves home at a very early age. She's kind of the perfect, prettier older sister who did pageants and was going to be an artist like their father. Their father really loved art, really loved collecting things, but he worked all his life as a janitor, as a custodian at Place du Portage, which is a government building in Gatineau, Quebec. A stone's throw from Parliament Hill. You can see Parliament Hill from Place du Portage. And I work in the same area as that building, and so I knew exactly what the author was talking about when her main character, I'm forgetting the main character's name right now. I only read this last weekend. Edith, her main character Edith, walks across a bridge. Now, she doesn't name the bridge, but I can tell you it is the Alexander Bridge, which is one of 4 major bridges that connect Gatineau, Quebec to Ottawa, Ontario. And I knew she was crossing that specific bridge because she mentioned the wooden boardwalk. And it is the only bridge that has a wooden pedestrian boardwalk. All the other bridges, their pedestrian sidewalks are concrete. And I've done this walk many times. You ring around the Museum of History and you go across and you can see Parliament Hill to your right, and to your left is the Canadian Art Museum, the National Gallery. And Edith grows up in this book to work at the National Gallery, and come to find out the author works there, which is where she got the inspiration for a character working there. So it was just interesting to see places I'm intimately familiar with portrayed in this book. There's one part where she's trying to find her sister and she's wandering through the Byward Market at night, and the Byward Market in the middle of the night is not somewhere I'd like to be. But yeah, this one really got to me. There were some slow parts, some parts where I felt like the writing wasn't 100%. I'm running out of space. I'm going to pause this and be back in a minute. Yes, so The Gallery of Lost Species. One of my favorite books that I've read so far this year, and despite some parts where it did get a little bit slow, the writing wasn't as great as in other parts, I really did enjoy it. If you're wondering why there's a unicorn on the cover, it's because it starts out with her being 13 years old and her father has taken them on a road trip to the Rockies, I believe. And she thinks she spots a unicorn, and she shouts this out to her father, and he says, "Oh yes, I think I just saw it," and she later realizes that it was likely a goat. But she spends her entire life thinking about this, because this is the moment when she met a certain boy, when things seem to go off course, and she lost something in her life. And then later on in the novel, the National Gallery has an exhibit which is basically a horse embalmed in formaldehyde or something, and an artist has added a horn to make it a unicorn. So there's that tie-in to that. But don't come into this expecting something mythical. It's very much contemporary literary fiction, and it just might make you cry a little bit. You get very invested in Edith reading this one. And that was just a random buy at Chapters. And I'm going to show you the book that spurred me to picking up a bunch of CanLit, and that is a nonfiction work, Arrival, The Story of CanLit by Nick Mount. I kind of dithered about picking this one up for several months, since it came out in fact, and I finally went ahead and did it. It's a hardcover, so it was a little bit more expensive than a paperback would be, but it's something I really wanted to read since I heard about it. It is about kind of the blossoming of CanLit in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, talking about the growth and founding of major publishing houses, of literary magazines, and about major names, major authors in CanLit getting their start. So Margaret Atwood, Alice Munro, Margaret Lawrence, Mordecai Richler, just to name a few. So I really loved reading this, and I've got stickies in here for works I want to read, and in some cases references to works that I have read, and I may want to refer to what the author here has to say about them. One of the things I liked about this book is that even though it's nonfiction, Nick Mount has a great writing style. There's a lot of humor in here, a lot of subtle humor, as he's describing these writers. And he really puts you right into that world of the 60s and the 70s and that literary culture in places like Toronto and Montreal and Vancouver, which were key literary cities, and they still are. So because of that, I decided to check out some journals. I have read Canadian literary journals in the past. I, for a time, was subscribed to the Fiddlehead from Atlantic Canada. I was subscribed to the New Quarterly, which is published by St. Jerome's College out of the University of Waterloo. But those ones didn't really do much for me. I think it's the kind of writing that those particular literary magazines accept. There's nothing light and fun about it. It's very, very serious. And so I went for something light and fun. I found the Feathertail Review, which is absolutely hilarious. It's fairly new. They're only on issue 19. And I think I'm going to be subscribing to this. I didn't want to do it right away though, because I went on their site, and if I subscribe now, they were going to send me issue 19 and issue 18 as well. And I don't want issue 19 because I've already got it. So I'm going to hold off until a few months from now, when my first issue will be issue 20, which I don't have yet. I've taken to circling the works that I really like in a particular magazine. The first one in here is really, really funny. It's titled, "I am Dean Prince of Prestigious University. Please send $10,000 to receive lifetime of riches." And it's basically one of those scam Nigerian prince emails. One of those things where someone says, you know, I've got $10 million and I need your help to invest it, to transport it. I want to give you some of it. Send me $10,000 so I can get started with giving you $1 million. But in this case, it's the dean of a university asking for $10,000 via certified check, money order, or wire transfer from your bank account. Tuition in exchange for $4.2 million paid bi-weekly as an annuity of $100,000 per year for the next 42 years. So it's really, really quite a funny piece. And then there's one, what's the title of that one? It's about Viking warlords. And I shared this one on my Twitter feed because they have it on their site online. The medieval warlords next door are disrespecting my Tennessee rights again. And so it's this short story, this piece of flash fiction about this guy who's living in an apartment building, a condo, something like that. And there's these medieval warlords warring basically on the lawn across the street. And he decides he's going to call the police on them, which kind of pisses them off. And it's really funny. And then there's a piece called Name Dropping. Dandelion. Socialist Tendencies in the Conspicuously Young. Stolen Heart / Bad Taste. I like that one as well. Yeah, this issue includes exactly 2 get-rich-quick schemes, a rhinoceros having a time in Atlantic Canada, an obituary for someone you don't care about and won't miss, the word orgasm printed twice, cannibalism in the romantic sense, deep ethical questions regarding the possible exploitation of the medieval tenants next door, a revolution, an unrelated murder, and several explosions. Puberty Revisited, designed in Ontario by people who chew with their mouths open, assembled in Manitoba by Viral Cat Videos, best before April 2018. This was really funny, and I'm looking forward to getting into some more issues of this. I've actually gone ahead and ordered issue 1, just to see where they started. I also picked up CNQ, Canadian Notes and Queries. From what I understand, this is quite an old and respected journal. It's been around since the 60s. Not quite as fun and funny as the Feathertail. So we've got poetry in here, we've got articles, towards a history of political cartooning in Canada. That one was quite interesting. And then there was a column in here. And I swear I did not know about the existence of this column when I named my channel. But there is a column in here called The Dusty Bookcase. Now I am from the Dusty Bookshelf, which isn't the same, but it sounds quite similar, and Brian Busby, he writes it in this magazine, and The Dusty Bookcase is a column about a journey through Canada's forgotten, neglected, and suppressed writing. So it's interesting that we both use similar names, and we both enjoy reading and talking about older works of CanLit. So I just thought that was interesting and surprising for me. And there's some cartoons in here too. A great article about Montreal poetry after Leonard Cohen. So this is something I'm going to be subscribing to as well. I read through a couple of others that I enjoyed, but I probably won't subscribe. The first one was Subterrane, Strong Words for a Polite Nation. We've got a beaver, a goose, some boots, a bicycle, carrots, and a hot dog. I don't know what they have in common, but this one contains fiction, poetry, commentary art, and book reviews. The illustrations in here aren't exactly my cup of tea. Some interesting short stories. Nothing that really jumped out at me all that much. I did enjoy some prose poems in here by Eve Joseph and 13 Found Microdramas by Charles Tidler. But I only ended up circling 2 things in the table of contents here, so not my favorite lit magazine I have picked up. I enjoyed Rattle 59 though. This is the spring 2018 edition, and this is completely poetry, and this is the kind of poetry that I like. It tells a story. It's not just a bunch of random juxtaposed images and metaphors that you're kind of supposed to get something out of. Instead, a lot of these start with an image and they essentially tell a story, which I think a good poem should do, at least the kind of poems I like. I think that's what they should do. This is the one I was not impressed with. I haven't even finished it yet. I've still got like half of it to go. But it's CV2, the Canadian Journal of Poetry and Critical Writing. This is the Winter 2018 edition. And this is the poetry I hate. This is that contemporary poetry where the authors just use bizarre metaphors and random bits of imagery that don't seem to work well together and don't make sense and leave me wondering what the fuck the poem was about and why the fuck they published it. I think so far there's been one in here that I liked. Right now, I don't have it with me because it's in my purse over there, but I'm reading Cocksure by Mordecai Richler, which is satire. It's a comedy and it's quite funny, but it does have some issues that kind of make you cringe. I knew from what I had read about it that it would potentially make the reader uncomfortable because of the way the author talks about Jewish people. I believe Mordecai Richler himself was Jewish, but he kind of picks fun at himself. Yeah, I might do a review of that book when I'm finished. It's not my favorite book that I've ever read. I'm not 100% sure how to take Mordecai Richler's writing. It's kind of hit or miss with him. And it's not something that I get immensely drawn into. It's something that I enjoy, but it's not something I love, if that makes sense. I've hardly touched my tea. yeah, so what I've read, I'm going to finish up that Richler book, and I still need to get through the rest of Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian that I started a couple weeks ago, and I've got Proust sitting around here that I want to read some more of, and basically I have a lot of books, and I don't intend to really go anywhere this weekend. I've seen all the good movies that are in the theater. I hit up the Museum of History 2 weekends ago. My friend's birthday is over, so it's just me and the books and some tea.